What's up guys, Winner Kills here, and welcome to a brand new series. I've been actually trying to make this series, at least the first episode of it, for quite some time now, and haven't really gotten around to figuring out how I want to film it, all that stuff, and I wanted to really be able to put to use the new camera, so hopefully you guys will be able to tell some sort of quality difference. But what is this new series going to entail? Well, I don't know what it's going to be called, but we're basically going to take the ban list in its current state, and we're only going to change one variable. You know, you've probably already heard the arguments before in the past, whatever it been about X card or maybe Y card, whatever it might have been. People always speculate, well, what would really happen if X card came back or Y card, right? We don't ever really fully know unless the cards themselves actually come back. And while you're asking yourself, how are we gonna, how is that possible? There's some cards that they'll never bring back. Well, this is the one belief that I've always had, and it's that there's no such card on the ban list that can ever come back, right? Konami can do whatever they want. It's their game. They could unban everything if they wanted to. Would it be a smart decision? Probably not. But today we're going to be looking at what would really happen if the Dragon Rulers came back with the current ban list. And yes, that means all the baby rulers are at 3 right now. So we're going to stop right here in this format. All of a sudden, Konami's like, hey, the rulers are at 1 or they're at 3. Well, what would actually happen? Would they be tier 0? Would they be just as good as the current best deck? We'll find out in just a moment. Okay, so for this section of the video, I want to start by talking about some of the cards that are currently available that the Dragon Rulers, if they were to come back this instant, would be able to abuse. And I've got some things listed up on the whiteboard over here just off camera. But we're going to talk about Ixies first, because when Dragon Rulers were around in their prime, that was pretty much their biggest go-to cards to abuse, were Ixies monsters, not Synchros, really, not Fusions. It was just mainly Ixies monsters. They didn't have Pendulums yet. They certainly didn't have Link monsters yet, as we all know. But what are some Ixies monsters that they could abuse now if they were to be suddenly reincarnated into the game, right? And we'll just talk about if they were to come back to 3 in this current list. Obviously, one card I'll mention first is obviously the baby rulers. All of those cards could be just absolutely, the amount of advantage the deck would be able to gain so quickly is just unheard of right now, honestly. You think Sky Strikers are bad? Read some of these effects and then get back to me and tell me how potent these two types of cards would be together in a format like we live in. Anyways, what was I talking about Ixies? We have Galaxy Eyes, or not Galaxy Eyes, but Galaxy Tomahawk, nonetheless. I believe it's number 42. I'll put a picture up here if I remember. But basically, this thing summons up as many tokens as possible, and it is a rank 7. Of course, all the rulers are level 7s. And that would be very easy to access in an opening hand of some dragons, Dragon Rulers, Foolish Burial, all that stuff, etc., you name it. This would be something that the deck would have no problem being able to summon one Tomahawk, make link plays, go into another one mid-combo if need be, because why the hell not? That card, of course, would be abused like you wouldn't believe, and we've seen decks abuse Galaxy Tomahawk right now, and of course there's only one deck that really can, and that's Mermail, and of course I would know from experience. But there's no other link-heavy deck right now, not Goki, not Spiral Nightmare, that can abuse Tomahawk the way Mermails can. Now just imagine Mermails, but like on a shitload of steroids, and then you might be starting to get the picture. And to be a lot more consistent, because you wouldn't have to worry about opening up Teus and Prince in your opening hand. Instead, okay, I'll open up 2 rulers because I play 12 of them in my deck, plus the babies, another 12. That's like 24 copies of just free rank 7s. But anyways, what's another card that they could abuse? Obviously, Draco Sack is a card they could abuse right now, just like they did back in the day. I remember Draco Sack used to be very, very expensive, maybe $100 a copy. I remember picking mine up for $60. That's how much this card used to be. It just used to be the end-all be-all when it came to rank 7s. Right now, needless to say, of course, it's not nearly as good as it once was, because now the game has changed quite a bit. Ending on a field of just Draco Sack with 2 tokens is just not going to do the same as it did several years ago. But right now, what gives Draco Sack sort of a new leverage is the fact that it, of course, summons tokens, and anything that summons tokens in this game is just inherently really good because, of course, links are a thing. and free monsters have always been good last time I checked. And what's the last Xyz monster that one of my Discord members actually brought up? And while it's a little gimmicky, with the new time rules that we have, a deck like Dragon Rulers would be able to really abuse Red Eyes Flare Metal Dragon. It is a rank 7, and that's what Dragon Rulers do best, is rank 7s and of course level 8 Synchros. It would be absurd to basically end on maybe like Saryuja with 2 Red Eyes Flare Metals, and this is just a hypothetical example, obviously it could be much better, or maybe Firewall Nightmare Griffin and then 2 Red Eyes Flare Metals with some other card up in an extra monster zone. That would be disgusting, 100%. And that is pretty much all I wanted to talk about for Xyz monsters that the Dragon Rulers would be able to abuse the hell out of right now. And next we're going to talk about Synchros. So for this next portion of the video, we're going to look at Synchro monsters that they could abuse, and obviously they are all level 7s, and the best Synchros that I could probably bring up are level 8 Synchros, as seeing there are plenty of really good level 1 tuners in the game right now. I'll just list off a couple. You know, we have, of course, Glow Up Bulb. We have, of course, Jet Synchron, which is a new card that I don't think was around when Rulers were in their prime. So that is a new card that they could 100% abuse. If it's in your grave, you just discard a card to special summon it out. But obviously, there is no other Synchro to talk about really in this category other than Psyframe Lord Omega. His effect to not only take a card out of your opponent's hand, turn 1, and some hand loop decks that we've seen in the past, Synchro Fusionist, this Lightsworn Plant deck I've had on my channel recently. The card can be abused in a couple of ways. Obviously taking cards out of your opponent's hand, as I have mentioned, and the effect that it can return a banished card to your graveyard during your main phase, or whatever the effect exactly reads. And of course, Dragon Rulers do a lot of banishing, and returning banished Dragon Rulers to the grave to be reused again is just, of course, very good. Not too much to discuss there. Now, that's really all I have for Synchros. There might be some really good level 9 Synchros. I guess Trish would be one. Trish is, of course, legal. We have Leo as a level 10 Synchro, who in himself is still actually pretty strong in this current format. And that's really about it for Synchros. But Psyframe Lord Omega is something that is just so powerful that the deck would have access to. That kind of makes you think twice about just how insane Psyframe Lord Omega would be with the Dragon Rulers in this current format. And now next, for that segment, was kind of short, we're going to talk about linked monsters. Of course, you've been waiting for it. What monsters can they abuse that are link monsters? Obviously, some people might have thought, you know, could Dragon Rulers really be that good in Master Rule 4? And of course they can with a card like Firewall Dragon. Firewall Dragon has, without a doubt, been one of the most infamous cards in this current format. And if they were to come back now, hopefully, you know, they don't ban Firewall tomorrow or as soon as I'm done making this video, which I doubt they will, but Firewall would be extremely potent with this deck. You know, you summon a ruler, you banish stuff, you get your effects of the ones you banished, search more, summon again, you know, make another link monster, summon one from hand from free, and then the ones that get sent to the graveyard for a link mechanic would just get banished for the summon of another ruler if you didn't want to summon off Firewall for free, because like, why wouldn't you want to summon it off Firewall for free? Think about it like this. What other mechanic has existed that has just solely allowed you to take cards that are on your field and just send them to the graveyard for another monster without using any fusion spells, any quick play spells, or trap cards, things like that? There just hasn't been. Imagine when a deck like Burning Abyss gets Cherubini, you know, after today they just won UK Nationals. You literally just get to summon 2 BAs and then send them to the graveyard to trigger effects. I mean, if it's sent to the graveyard, period, they get their effects. So, like, you just get to send things to the grave just to fuel your grave for other plays you want to make, and you get a monster out of it in the meantime. To how broken that would be, who knows? But it's just a mechanic that would just be so disgusting for the Dragon Rulers. Summon 2 rulers, summon 3 rulers, send them all to the grave for a fucking decode talker, and then you're really chilling because you have now a graveyard loaded up with 3 more Dragon Rulers that you can summon another Dragon Ruler from hand with, banish 2 of them, and get more and more effect. Obviously, Firewall being probably at the top of the list, we also have the Nightmares that are out currently, and that is probably the the cream of the crop when it comes to an archetype of Link monsters that Dragon Rulers would have at their disposal. If you were playing like a Link heavy build, the deck would probably have no problem extra linking with a few extra cards in play. Obviously Galaxy Tomahawk would be in the combo there, without a doubt. You would just need a way to summon 2 Dragon Rulers, and then you're pretty much set. You just summon Link, pitch for cost, you know, to use a Link monster, you know, one of your Nightmare Monsters effects, send it to the grave, draw, and then you hit a free Dragon Ruler in grave, because that's really awesome. Why wouldn't you want to do that? You get a draw out of it because it's co-linked, you get the effect of the Nightmare you're using, and then you just put a Dragon Ruler in your grave, because, yeah, that's just a thing that they do. That's it for this section, when we're talking about, you know, what extra deck monsters they would be able to abuse, when we're regarding to, you know, Xyz monsters, Synchro monsters, and of course, Link monsters here in Master Rule 4. Next, we're going to talk about cards that our main deck card choices that we could use that would make the deck, of course, even more potent. Alright, so now that we've pretty much covered every relevant extra deck monster that the Dragon Rulers would actually be able to just break completely, obviously the extra deck isn't the only deck that we need to talk about when talking about Dragon Rulers when they come back. Of course, they just wouldn't be splashed into any deck here and there, well, although they could be, you know, Lightsworn Rulers, Mythic Rulers, you name it. Probably just go back to pure Rulers at that point if they're all back to 3. Now, what are some cards that are out now that we can abuse greatly? I think, in my personal opinion, a card that was just recently unbanned is Monster Reborn, because Monster Reborn would just be insane in that deck. And then, of course, it is legal. The Dragon Rulers would be able to take 100% advantage of that. Just reborn a ruler for free, and then use it for something else. A Synchro, a Link, an Xyz, you name it. Of course, Soul Charge is still legal at 1. The deck would fully be able to take advantage of that. But what are some more specific cards right now? Now, we know Burial from a Different Dimension returns up to 3 banished cards to their owners' graveyards. That card is an Omega on steroids, and it is at 3 right now, whereas opposed to in the past, I think it was only ever at 1 for them to use. This card is now a power card that you can play at 3 that they would fully be able to take advantage of without a doubt. Another card, a personal favorite of mine, is Return of the Dragon Lords. It's basically a Monster Reborn for the Dragon Rulers, just any level 7 or 8 dragon monster, and then add on top of that the effect to protect them from destruction or battle. That in of itself is enough to just completely sell me on the fact that just how insane they would be without a doubt. So you give them 3 Return of the Dragon Rulers, or Return of the Dragon Lords, would you? Not Return of the Dragon Rulers, even though that's technically what we're talking about, but that's not what the card's called. And then, of course, Monster Reborn and Soul Charge. So you give them 5 cards to just recur their field with, and not to mention that 3 of those protect them as well. And another card I think that I have written up here lastly is just a card like Ravine, Dragon's Ravine, that is. This card is at 3 right now, and we still have Terraforming at 3. It just would be insane. Discard a card, send a dragon to the graveyard. You name it, it's going to be a dragon we're getting sent to the grave for free. We have Foolish Burial still. Plenty of plays to be able to be made there without a doubt. There's not really too much else to say other than it would just be pure insanity. And I think, in my personal opinion, without a doubt, if the deck did come back right now, it would probably be tier 1 100%. Now, depending on what type of variant you would want to play, we have cards like, you know, the Pendulum Monster, Dark Worm. It is a dragon. You could probably throw together some pretty nasty Pendulum builds, as someone in my Discord had suggested as well. You know, we have Dragon Shrine being a card that's still at 3 that they could fully abuse. Some of the new Blue Eyes stuff that they could abuse. The Galaxy stuff, you name it, any dragon archetype that, you know, Dragon Rulers could find a home with, or just on themselves be a pure deck to play. They would easily be at the top of the food chain and boost up any dragon deck, period. And obviously that's why they're still banned, but this is kind of what would happen if they came back to 3, and that's why I wanted to talk about it. Sit down and talk and be like, you know, would it be all that, or would it not be? And I think, without a doubt, to easily say, it would 100% be an insane deck to play currently. But one last question, one sort of thought that I had was basically, if they did come back, and it was a link spam deck like I personally think they would be, and perhaps end with a synchro here and there, maybe like Cyframe Lord Omega, because it's definitely 100% doable to end with some links, really powerful links, some synchros. It's not unheard of. It can definitely be done, especially with a card like Nightmare Griffin. Just have, you know, your Omega next to the Griffin, a Firewall, another Omega, and then maybe a Draco Sack in the top zone. Like, that would probably be pretty insane. There's not really much your opponent can do at that point, and then your just ability to grind is unprecedented. Even so that much of so, I would say, of like Sky Strikers or BA, the deck would just be able to grind and just pop off turn after turn with pretty much unlimited resources. But would the deck be able to pull off something any more different than what Goki Nightmare can do? Just end on an extra link. I 100% they think they would be able to extra link no problem. But what would really make it stand out? The consistency, the constant recurability, the fact that the deck has access to tons of Monster Reborns, tons of ways to summon them to the field like the Baby Rulers, the banish effects. I think it would be kind of like a Goki Nightmare on steroids. And a lot more consistent too, because there's just so many consistency cards. Dragon Ravine, Foolish Burial, Burial from a Different Dimension. You have, like I said, not Trade-in, but Sacred Swords of 7 stars is also at 3. That's another card that I forgot to mention. You banish the ruler to draw 2, and then you get to do something off the ruler that you banished. So, like, the list just goes on and on of the cards that this deck would be able to abuse. And without a doubt, like I said before, would definitely be tier 1, probably approaching tier 0, to say the least. Next, we're going to talk about what would happen if they were at 1. Would it be total chaos or not? My opinion, probably not. And we're going to talk about some of the decks that would be able to be boosted out greatly by the rulers just coming back at 1 as sort of splash card that individual decks could abuse. Okay, so here we are at this part of the video where we're going to basically talk about the Dragon Lures coming back to 1 apiece. Now, like I said, obviously there's 4 Dragon Lures consisting of Tempest, Tidal, Redox, and Blaster. And they're all different attributes, 1 Fire, 1 Earth, 1 Wind, 1 Water. Now, if they were to come back to 1, we wouldn't see any sort of Dragon Ruler chaos like they would be at 3. And let's sort of just forget about the baby rulers for a second and just focus on each individual ruler, obviously the level 7 ones, and what they would do for other decks around, just basically based on their own individual effects that they offer. Now, we look at Tidal, which is a card that was used in Mermails previously. You just send itself and a water to the grave to send a water. There's tons of combos that could be used with that right now. That would give Mermails a huge boost in and of itself. And we have a card like Redox that Goki would be able to abuse because there's a lot of Earth monsters in Goki. And Redox, I think, is like a Monster Reborn, and that's just a free summon you could get on your field if you do happen to draw into that Redox. And speaking of the wind ones and the fire ones, there's not really too many things that I can think off the top of my head that they would be able to be splashed into. Perhaps Infernoids is one deck that I could think about because it is fire monsters. I think I used to actually play Infernoids when Blaster was still legal at 1 with Snatch Steal, Hidden Armory. I remember plenty of times, you know, Blaster pop, discarding itself with another Infernoid, and then summoning it by banishing Infernoids if I didn't have any other way to summon any other Infernoids, because of course, you know, why not get a free summon for a rank 7 or a Synchro? And Tempest's effect to basically pitch itself and another dragon to the grave to just add a dragon in of itself is absolutely insane. Like I said, Tempest would be one of the best ones to throw into any dragon deck. Pitch it and another wind or another dragon to the grave, and you get yourself to search any dragon, which obviously a generic searcher in any dragon deck is just insane. Dragoonides would get a boost, Blue Eyes would get a boost, any deck that plays sort of any dragons, Galaxy, obviously Galaxy Eyes would just be tremendous. I think that's probably the worst example out of all of them. And not to mention, one Ixie that I forgot to mention would be Dark Matter Dragon. Of course, this does not even need explanation. Dark Matter Dragon would be insane. Oh my god, send 3 dragons to the grave with different names. Dragon Rulers all day. But as far as individual decks getting a boost from these said cards, if they were to come back to 1 apiece, there'd obviously be a couple decks that would definitely get a nice boost from these cards just being in the game at all. But now, the last thing I want to talk about is what would the current format itself do to the Dragon Rulers? Should they be inhibited by all the hand traps and all the new cards that we have available? Let's take a look at some of these cards. What cards am I talking about? We have Infinite Impermanence. We have Called by the Grave. We have, Evenly Matched. These cards hurt any deck, you name it. Called by the Grave would be huge. You banish one of their, blasters, tempests, titles, redoxes. That shuts that card off for the whole turn, which could be very devastating if they just didn't have 3 other copies of Dragon Rulers to use that turn. Okay, you banished my Tempest. Now I'm just going to summon Redox. I'm going to summon Title, etc., etc. I think it would hinder the deck a lot, though. Maybe keep it in check just a bit. Now, when Dragon Rulers were in their prime, they had to worry about Maxi and Valor and probably Droll and Lockbird and DD Crow. But right now, the deck would have to worry about Ash, Ogre, Ghost Bell, Cherries. I don't know if Droll and Lockbird would be such a big deal. I guess it probably would be because, you have Tempest searching cards all for you all the time. When they get banished, they search, I'm pretty sure. I think all these hand traps would be something that would hurt the deck a lot, and we'd see a lot of people probably siding for them. Siding in plenty of hand traps just to try to slow the deck down, and I think it would be something the deck would have to take into account. Ash being probably pretty huge to stop some of the baby rulers. Ogre being huge to stop some link plays. Bell being huge to stop reborn effects like from Redox and etc., or sending cards from deck to the grave with like Title would be huge. And then Cherries to hit extra deck monsters that they would be able to abuse constantly, like Galaxy Tomahawk. So the deck would get checked a little bit by hand traps, but it's just tough to say. If I had like the physical deck in front of me to actually test it out, which is something I might do in the future as sort of a follow-up. But without a doubt, I think hand traps and cards like Called by the Grave would give this deck a hard time right now, sort of a counter to it, if you will. And yeah, that's pretty much going to do it for this section of the video. I'm going to go ahead and conclude with some final thoughts. So overall, we pretty much talked about what would happen if the Dragon Rulers were to come back to 3 right now. Obviously, it would be absolute chaos. We have cards like Dark Matter, Tomahawk, Red Eyes Flare Metal, Draco Sack, Ixie's monsters that would just be bonkers. We have Psyframe Lord Omega would be abused like crazy, like there's no tomorrow. Firewall Dragon, the Nightmares, you name it, it would just be absolute chaos. Dragon's Ravine, Burial from a Different Dimension, Return of the Dragon Lord, Soul Charge, Monster Reborn, all the baby rulers. It would just be, as I've said many times, absolute chaos. If they were to come back to 1, it wouldn't be so insane. We would probably see plenty of Dragon decks get a huge boost. Obviously, we still have to take into account that the baby rulers are at 3 right now, and there might be some ruler variants with Mythic engines or Blue Eyes engines or Dragoonity engines. Who really knows? Or maybe Pendulum engines, because we did talk about Dark Worm and obviously like Dragon Shrine. There might be some cool Pendulum, Blue Eyes, ruler stuff going on. Electromite, who knows? It would just be, even at 1, would just be a lot right now. And of course, Firewall Dragon, even if they did come back to 1, is just a card that I honestly think, if the rulers were ever to come back, if there was one card we'd want to take out of the equation for the sake of the game itself, would be Firewall Dragon. That card has caused enough problems with a lot of decks, not to mention what it would do with Firewall. The possibilities are pretty much endless. We talked about some counters that the deck might have trouble going into right now. While it is without a doubt one of the top tier decks of all times, it isn't completely invincible to everything. We do have plenty of more hand traps in the game. Cards like Called by the Grave, you name it. Ghost Ash, Ghost Bell, Ghost Ogre, Ghost Cherries. Plenty of counter cards the deck would have to face up against without a doubt. And that would surely slow the deck down to the point where maybe, just maybe, it would be no better than the current best decks that we see right now. But if they were to release the rulers currently to 3, like I said, it was without a doubt would be one of the best decks of the format. So let's just take a moment to be thankful that they're not back to 3 right now. But also, I want to thank you guys for watching this whole video. If you managed to make it all the way through, I hope I managed to make it somewhat interesting. This is just the first run through of the series. I don't know how I'm going to make it different in future episodes. I'm going to polish it up a little bit more in post. Hopefully I can make it look a little bit better. We'll see. This is just basically a pilot, if you will, of this series, so you guys can get the gist of how it's going to work in the future, the formatting of it. The filming, though, is something, and the editing is something that I'm going to work on secondary. I would just like to get the video out to you guys as soon as possible, but everything else will sort of fall into place in the future, so don't expect all these videos to look exactly like this one has in the future. They'll probably change, maybe different camera angles, you know, different footage in between me talking, some B-roll footage, who knows. But anyways, give me your guys' feedback. If there's anything at all I missed that would be abused by the rulers if they were to come back, you know, what really happened if they were to come back, leave that stuff down in the comment section below. I probably missed a couple of things. No way I can cover everything. And leave your feedback as well. It'd be greatly appreciated. But anyways, guys, thank you so much for watching. And as always, WinnerKill signing out. We'll see you guys in the next one.